Guys, Roland here. Welcome to another episode of the Remember Who You Are show. Today's episode is very special. It's the culmination of work that has taken over a year. And I always start these by saying I have a special guest, blah, 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 but you already know who it is because you can read the title of this YouTube and you can see the graphic. So right after this introduction, you'll get to meet him and we'll get into the conversation. Thank you. The prime directive for every human is to know thyself, which is not a discovery, it's a remembering. And that's the goal for this show, to help you remember who you are. I am your host, Roland Achenjang. Guys, welcome to the Remember Who You Are show. My name is Roland, and with me today is a familiar guest. He goes by the Energy Doctor. He's a very good friend with high energy, and he is my mentor, talking about none other than Randy Veitenheimer. Randy, welcome, man. How are you?
I'm great and happy to see you again.
Likewise. Yeah, it's been a while, a good maybe 7 months at least since we last talked.
Yeah, life goes sideways sometimes.
But it never stops, that's for sure.
No, it's actually it's very fascinating. Sometimes they call it return to center, not sender, like Elvis Presley song. You're going along, you go, oh yeah, I forgot to pick that back up, when I went off to the races or sideways or whatever. And the interesting thing about that is it seems to make time irrelevant. In other words, like, hello, I'll talk to you tomorrow. And tomorrow's 7 months later and you go, hello. and it's like you pick up in that same timeline. And I find that very fascinating, right?
Yeah.
We do it sometimes, like, say, a high school reunion or something. You pick up a conversation that's 20 or 30 years old, right?
Yeah. This one actually is a year in the making, Randy, because I remember in 2021, this was the last quarter of 2021, is when I reached out to you about having this conversations around Dr. David Hawkins' Map of Consciousness. And then at the same time, I was revamping my website and creating the Remember Who You Are show and trying to create the graphics for that. And I thought, by January of 2022, we would begin. But we never did. We actually recorded episode 1 in April. So it's literally been a year. And we were going right along, and then we got to episode 6. And then, like you said, things went sideways.
Yes, blows up.
And so is life, though. It's interesting, but here we are back again a year later, culminating this conversation. And you haven't changed at all, like physically. That's amazing.
I actually, it's not changing, but one of those crazy things I learned in yoga, Kundalini yoga, and some other tricks when I was younger was the idea of aging could be postponed or not participated in. And I tell people from the time I was about 23 to about 28, I didn't age. So there's like a 5-year gap there. And the biggest thing was I wasn't kind of like present for it. I was always off in the deep meditations and the martial arts, and who has time for that? Right? So at some point, and this is what people don't understand, is that you should become interactive with yourself. I mean, that's it. It's not that I have a body. It's let me interrogate this thing and find out what it's doing, right? Mm-hmm. So most people can't calibrate and can't come up with what I call definitive answers that allow you to take actions. And one of the ones I've been using lately is the idea and teaching students is self-programming. It's like when you go to sleep at night, tell yourself to re-energize your body. You tell your body as a separate thing. I want you to re-energize tonight. I want you to regenerate anything that needs to be regenerated. And I want you to rejuvenate anything that needs to be done. So we don't even have to be specific. We just give a general directions to the human body and away we go. And so that whole phenomena then becomes your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, psychic, psychological, etheric, astral calls. There's first 10 or 11 of them that you decide to become interactive with it. Not just something that carries you around and you have no clue what it's doing.
What it's doing, yeah.
Yeah, so that is a contemplative, interactive way to deal with the physical form of your existence, right? And then once you have that underway, it's like, well, why not do the same thing with your consciousness, with your mind, and when we look at that, I think that's what people come up with all this idea of manifestation and all this other stuff. It's like, before you get too far afield, before you go out there and try to manipulate the universe, it's like there's something sitting there with you or you with it, and it definitely needs your attention.
Yeah.
Because everything goes on in the human body, human existence is an outcome. And that implies a timeline. And that means at some point, it wouldn't have taken much energy to make a small change in the outcome. Yeah. And that's just astrophysics, we'll call it.
Yeah. So. No, giving directions makes sense, especially because the human body is super intelligent in and of itself. Right? It's an intelligent being, an intelligent entity. It self-heals if you give it the space and the direction. So take advantage. Yeah. That's neat.
In computers, I think they call it root access, right?
Yep.
Root access or admin privileges or whatever. And like sometimes people ask me, what do you do? And I go, I sit around being weird. You know? If somebody asks me what I'm thinking about, I'll blurt out exactly what I just said. And we call those conversation bombs because people go, well, I don't know what to do with that. And basically, I don't say them out loud, but at the same time, I'd love to because I'm looking for somebody else to go, oh, yeah, I've looked at that.
I've looked at it, yeah. Oh, I've done it, yeah.
Wow, can we just, have a conversation? And it gets directly into Dr. Hawkins, the power versus force thing about the level 700. So.
Yeah, it does. Before we get to that, which is what this conversation's about today, is finally getting to that last level. And they have, of course, been a delay for anyone who's watching this, who's watched the last couple of episodes that we've covered. For the other levels of consciousness on the map, you know that there's been a huge hiatus. And yeah, we need to talk about why. I feel that things have died down a little bit that we can discuss. We started that conversation with a plan to finish it before your scheduled talk in Sedona, which got canceled and also kind of put a wrench, or things went sideways, if I use your words, put a wrench in us completing the entire map. And if you don't mind, from your perspective, just sharing what happened, why the hiatus, why are we only now completing this at this point in time?
It's pretty simple. I call it a clear path forward. So I'm running around in Arizona and I go to revisit the Creative Life Center. And I go in and I walk into the hall, the auditorium, and I couldn't believe how small it was. Now, you see how memory comes in. I imagine there's this huge space with 300, 400 people in it, and it's a space that'll hold 300, but it wasn't that huge to me anymore. So what changed? So I walked up on stage and looked out at it, and I go, I can handle this room, right? That was the thought. I could handle 300 or 400 people being in the audience and delivering this conversation. I walked right into the office and said, I'd like to book a day. And so they told me the deposits and the amount, and I said, I'll write you a check, no problem. And so then we got started and started setting the date. And they called up and said, well, we gave that date to somebody else, somebody with more money. So that becomes interesting in and of itself. It's like this Creative Life Center was set up to, let's say, promote consciousness. And of course, the retail economy comes into place also. And so they did that twice. And so, look, I go, I need a firm date so that, for publishing. And we finally settled on a date. And I started talking about it. And all of a sudden they call me and say, we can't do it. And the opposition was what I call the dark side. The opposition was phenomenal. And it's like, okay, I am here to do a talk called Power versus Force Revisited, based on a student's experience of what it was like to go through about 50-something lectures over a period of about 5 years. And again, Veritas and other people involved in that all just went nuts. They said I couldn't talk about it. Well, I can do a book review on anything. And basically it was a book review. And they just like, we'll sue you, we'll do it. Well, I mean, they went onto a rant. And it's always amazing to me, the level of opposition to the truth. So no matter who's presenting it, it's like, if you want to speak the truth about something, don't necessarily expect any kind of support for it. Okay. And it's an interesting phenomenon that as you go through the scale of consciousness and work your way up, you will start getting opposition. People don't want you to be better, smarter, more intelligent, more handsome, anything, They don't want that. I don't care how much they say it, right? You will always find somebody, and you can see it in our news reporting, and there's always somebody that's basically creating negativity or creating fear. And you go, well, why would they do that? And the answer is because that is their form of nourishment. That's the easiest way to look at it.
Yeah.
As you go up, a lot of people flip. They call it the fall. Been in some books, but Fall of Mankind, Fall of the Angels, Fall, all this stuff. And what it means is that you get to a certain level and there's just, you run out of gas, you might say. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to hear that anymore. It's like you could publish a very popular book and, a year or 5 years later, nobody knows what the heck. But there's some of them that persist, right?
Yeah.
So my idea was just to share a student's experience. I could do the same thing about yoga and the same thing about martial arts. I had one student ask me, all my martial arts teachers, I told him the ones that were alive, and he went to each one of them to see if I was telling them the truth about what they taught me, which I thought was hilarious.
That's good research too, though.
Oh, yeah, do it, right?
Yeah.
Go to those classes and see what I went through, right? Because I'm telling the truth about it. So that was the idea. And when it fell apart, I decided that the intensity of the negativity was, first of all, unbalanced. It was more than was necessary, right? Yeah. And that's always a clue that you're dealing not with human consciousness. And that's what I'll say about that, right? So So that's what
Yeah,
happened to that story. And and you know, over the years, I've studied with all kinds of people, and I could basically do a video or a presentation on what each one of those was like and what I learned and what I went through, right?
Yeah.
And all of it comes back to, as a student, you're required to go through things. That's it.
yeah. There are two main things that have popped in my mind to ask you about, you know, as you shared that story, which, by the way, I'm glad you went through the experience because I know you learned something from it. And everybody else who was involved also learned something from it, which was unique and exactly what they needed. This is my life is perfect, rosy view all the time, right? Yeah. But um, it does bring up a good question about you being able to, well, even before I say that, was there any issue with you putting this talk together related to you getting paid or you being able to sell tickets?
No, I was, my intent was to produce a video. I literally didn't care if anybody showed up. I kept saying I would be happy if I got at least like 10 or 20 people in the front rows to make it look like I was speaking with somebody. I had no intent to, you know, like the ticket sales. I think I sold 11 tickets or something, you know, before it all went sideways. That wasn't why I was there. I wanted to get on tape, like what I had been through as a lesson, kind of like you'd go to a college course and say, well, I'm going to go study consciousness. And then I would present a video that said, well, over 5 years, this is what happened with me and the experience I had, only as a reference point. So I wasn't like, I need millions of dollars for this, or it wasn't going to be a high end, what do you call it, production, right? It was just to do some light video. And the reason is, I feel like when you lecture, let's say if you're a professor or something, you tend to sophisticate your language. And in doing so, you leave out maybe that which would allow people to connect to it. Now, these are my own opinions. And so I was looking at like, let me tell you what happened, right? Let me tell you about sitting in those rows. And I had a computer, he'd make fun of me where I was typing 100 plus words a minute. I was literally transcribing what he was saying at the same time I was writing down my own thoughts. And I have like bundles of notes from those lectures from that. And again, and the reason I was doing that, I wanted to see what did I think about what he was saying, right? From my own perspective. And then I had a lot of students with me at the time, and I wanted them to be able to look at it from a different perspective, not just as a teaching coming at you, right?
Yeah.
So you're required to participate with your own consciousness to elaborate or to elucidate or to in some way find your way forward with any knowledge delivered that way. So I was extremely thankful that I was able to be at the beginning of those lectures and to be able to work my way forward. It's the same thing as if you work your way forward through a college degree. It's just that nobody's ever done it through a viewpoint of consciousness itself. And so for that, I was eternally grateful, right? It's like, wow, you've given me a lot of things to think about, a lot of things to work through, and a lot of growth to be engaged in. And if you can say that about anything, marriage, university, I mean, it's like, that's a good time. That's a really good
time.
I did pass out sometimes for days at a time afterwards, or have headaches, or it just hurt too much, you know. And again, those are things that, you know, people don't think about. Oh, I read this book, Power versus Force, and it gave me a headache for 2 days. I tell people that would be normal, right? If it bothered you for a year or two, that'd probably be better, right?
Yeah.
And
Signs
so those
of
are, yeah, those are things that people don't really, to my way of thinking or experience, engage in. And so that was the whole intent of it, and of course, I would love to have a production crew and somebody put together the whole thing, and you get the music and the videos, and but it doesn't alter the content. And my point all along with Gaia, when they asked me what I want to do, I said I want to be able to explain things in a way that lets people access the information differently than just as a from an expert or authority delivering the information. So.
Absolutely.
Human to human. Right?
Yeah.
But Randy, what this brings up in my mind is the idea that many people on YouTube leave reviews for content, software, products that they've used, right? And so if you have let's say a really nice YouTube channel with a lot of views on there, and you review a product, you can generate revenue for yourself as a result of that. You know what I mean? Like through ads, if people are watching, and so how is that different in this case? If I said I wanted to record myself sharing my experience about using a particular product, that's the big question for me, because there's a huge area of grayness there that we need to figure out. Are you allowed to talk about a product that you've used with a platform that you have? And you know what I mean? And so why again was this now like a big, hey, no, you can't do this. You've used the product, you've read the book, you've had your own experience as a result. Why can't you share that experience with people?
You're going, it gets into fields and morphic fields, and it's like I have knowledge I would like to share.
Mm-hmm.
The sharing of it and monetizing of it, I'm not really aware of to the point I could engage in it. Okay. Mm-hmm. So all my content is free. It's like, I'm just trying to help people out to whatever degree they can be helped. And so I've had people, the last one I said, well, you're number 15 that wanted me to monetize my content, right? And there were 15 people that approached me on it. But every one of them seems to be engaged in, I just want to make money off of it. And while I could use the money, right? We all could. It's more that I would rather have the knowledge out there than to put it out in such a way that people couldn't access it, right? So I love Gaia. I think at the time they were charging $10 a month or something, and I thought that was a fair price for what knowledge they were distributing at that time, which included mine. Lately, I've been doing some book reviews for Gravity University with Lindsay. And those books, it's the same thing as to reveal knowledge to people that's just sitting in science fiction books or in popular fiction. Or, in other words, there's lessons to be learned through all of it. And how you monetize that in whatever way, I don't know. I'm not familiar with it. Right.
Yeah. Okay. Me neither, right? Because I'm doing the same thing. Essentially, anybody who feels comfortable sharing their experience about something on a platform where they could generate revenue from, what this limitation for you, essentially, like the fact that you were not allowed to do that, is almost saying no other person can. Because I'm a product of everything that I've touched, including this particular book, actually. Like, it's because of you that I read it. I can talk about it as much as I can, because I read the book and I had my experience, and I can put them two together and say, this is how it impacted me. Now, eventually, if my YouTube channel starts generating revenue, is every other book that I've read and the authors of those books, or the people who have rights to those books, are they going to come and say, you can't talk about my book because even though it was your personal experience and it shaped who you are, X, Y, and Z, this is my reason for why you can't talk about it. And that's where I struggle to move forward, because it happens all the time, everywhere. Anybody who is sharing something is influenced by something else that they've read, and so how do you now start to divide who owns what and who has rights to what?
You have, to me, you have the freedom to speak about things you want to speak about. Okay. My information is educational in purpose, we'll say. It's sharing what I went through as a way for you to what do they call it? Vicariously explore the same subject.
Mm-hmm.
And that gets into a subject I'm going to do at some point called "There's Only One Human and Only One Human Life."
We've talked about that in the past, actually, Randy.
So, yeah. So when you look at that, then you go, well, I want to talk about spirituality. Well, I can remember when I first started teaching yoga, they would leave crosses on my mailbox and have prayer vigils in the parking lot while I was teaching.
You need to be saved, man.
Not so long ago. And you think about that, and you look at the number of yoga places in the United States now. And I mean, some places like in Louisiana and Tennessee and Oklahoma and stuff, I was the only one teaching in the whole state. And so, that it's like the field, the opposition, does everything it can to prevent you from gaining any traction, any interest. Mm-hmm. But at some point you break through, and like now there's, hundreds of yoga places, thousands of them, tens of thousands. And you're like, I started that.
or I was part of it,
From ego, it's like, yeah, I did that, right?
Yeah.
And of course the answer is no. The demand for that knowledge is what did that. And so I think that like all the little book reviews and little podcasts that like this is to try to provoke or to poke a response, and a positive one, in that you've gained a little knowledge that you can use for your benefit and then for the benefit of others. So that's the idea behind it. Right?
Yeah.
So.
And Randy, if we can, just full disclosure, I haven't spoken to Dr. Hawkins's wife at all. I don't know her personally, never interacted with her. And so I guess this could be a way, if this ends up and she sees this, an open invitation to come and share her side, right? Let's, because I'm somebody who is a firm believer in the fact that we're all playing roles for each other, right? There's only one human. And if you use that analogy, then the next thing would be this one human has a bunch of cells, and we're each of those cells, and each one of those cells is supporting another cell somehow. And so sometimes I play that role where I either express what you would call a darker force that is not human for somebody trying to do something, right? I'm the person who is saying, no, don't do this, not like that. And then they on the other side are saying, but why not? And I think that that's kind of the beautiful thing about being human. So the next question is really, Randy, is when you go through an experience like this, or human collective go through an experience like this, how does it affect our conscious expansion? Like if you, like an experience where you're trying to do something and then you get this huge kibosh, like, no, you can't. How does it collectively impact like the human conscious expansion for the person who is putting the kibosh down and for you who's getting kiboshed?
To me, it's knowledge should be shared. It's why do you gain it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, knowledge that you gain falls, not being rude, for the most part, falls in the mundane. In other words, I had lunch, I had breakfast. That's well, so did everybody else. And then, well, I have breakfast, and here we go. We start, it had this, it had that, and before you know it, we have avocado toast. So, and then we have avocado toast. It's $15 in DC. So, and you're like, how did this go from we're having breakfast to you smash an avocado on a piece of toast, and now it's $12 or whatever? So we go from something that is common and mundane, and then we make it special, whereas, or as opposed to finding the specialness of it rather than creating specialness. I don't know, like there's a uniqueness when you go to, let's say, a Kundalini yoga class and the meditation, and at the end of it, you've experienced something you've never experienced before, right? It's something that, if it was a good thing, you may want to try to share. So now you're trying to find a language to express that. I think that's all of us, right? Mm-hmm. But in the same class will be people going, oh no, you didn't experience that. and then you go, well, why would you put the kibosh on it? Why would you filter? Why would you squash that information? And the answer is, they don't want you to have an experience that they didn't have. They don't want you to be better, don't want you to be different, don't want you to, all these things. I tell all my business clients, the better you do, the more people are going to hate you. The more people are going to show up to block your movement forward. And that is not a condemnation of society or anything. It's just a recognition that it goes on, as opposed to spiritual naivety, which says, oh no, everybody's going to be happy because I'm rich. Right? Everybody's going to be happy because I'm smart. It's like it's the reality of it is much different. And I think that is one of the, what do they call it? It's kind of like a morphic field that prevents your rise being any higher than it could be. And we only got to go through history. There was a guy named Tesla, right? Mm-hmm. Or Edison. Edison did all that, not Tesla. Right.
Randy, you're going to get some people coming after you.
Yeah. And it's like all of this has been, and you go, why? Why can I not in a textbook have the history of what Tesla actually accomplished, as opposed to a textbook that says Edison did this and this and this and this, which we later find out is not true, as long as we're willing to investigate it, right? Mm-hmm. So a couple of things went on. In high school, I was corrupted forever. Somebody said, let's go here or do something. And somebody said, why? And I said, why not? So that became that became the problem, right?
Yeah.
That question, why not?
Yeah. Famous.
Down with the rulers, down with paddle, everything to prevent you from asking why not. And so that has, we could say, got me in a lot of trouble in life, or we could say that has provided some very interesting experiences.
And I think both don't have to be mutually exclusive. I think that they, it's the truth. It's the balance to why. Why not? Well, let's find out, right? Why not? That's how a lot of businesses start. It's how I started C2 Keep. It's how I started conversating with you. I remember having that conversation with myself. Hey, you should reach out to Randy. Why would you do that? Well, why not? And the why not was he'll never respond to you. Who do you think you are? And I was like, but why won't he respond to me? And I was like, okay, well, let's do this. So
No, it's
yeah.
I did one podcast, can't remember who, and they go, you put your phone number out there. And I go, yeah, email, phone number, hell, call me, right? And they
Mhm.
go, that's shocking. Like most people, I think they thought I had a more elevated position in the universe, right? And I go, no, it's like, call me, why not? I'm interested in finding out what's going on in the world. And I do that through interactions with people.
Yeah.
So to me, that's a form of enjoyment and a form of education by being engaged with the world and reality going on right now. So
Yeah. No, I love it. Um, I put my email out there and I'm getting hit by bots from Ukraine and Russia. It's crazy. Someone said you've made it if 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 you're on your radar. True story.
those Ukraine girls really knocked me out.
Oh man, Randy, you said something that was fascinating. It's like the more I don't know if you use the word successful, but the more you're innovating and you're actually, yeah, I guess successfully innovating, the more people are going to come out the woodworks to make sure that, right? Like you say, you don't stay handsome, you don't stay happy, like you don't succeed. Is right in line with where we are on the map of consciousness, and I think we can transition to talk about level 700 up to 1,000. And on Dr. David Hawkins's map, he called this enlightenment. And I usually just set you up and say, go, enlightenment. Uh, what we got going on up here? Why is this so rare to attain for us humans? Uh, yeah, what gives?
Well, if you look at the chart that's in the book, each level of consciousness, he provides a little explanation. Okay. And when he gets to 700 to 1,000, he just groups it all as one thing and calls it enlightenment. And to me, what that means, you're on your own then at that point. There's nothing else to be said here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the old maps, beware, there be dragons, something. And I think that's really true in the standpoint that, like I said about having conversations, you can have a conversation under 200 all day long. All you got to do is watch the news and, fear. And the one I love is you look at any of those people and you instantly go weak. And it's like, well, why would you even look at them? Why would you listen to them? And then you get up in the 400s, the intellect, and it's like, oh, well, this is interesting to listen to, right? And then you get into 500s, well, 540 joy. We teach people that's the optimum level. And the reason we teach 540 is optimum level because joyfulness supersedes love. It supersedes the intellect. It supersedes science. And of course, science hates that. And so science doesn't want any other religion out there. So
No. Wait a minute.
yeah, so joyfulness becomes something that's at a certain level indelible, like in children. It's present basically at all times. It's kind of like you could push a little child down and they'll cry and stuff and come back up and start playing again. In other words, they're not going to participate. And to go back into that state of not participating in negativity, to me, propels you upwards then from 540 on. It's not a withdrawal. It's a refutation, we'll call it, right? I think in one of those books called the Bible, it says we have the power to refute. And I looked at that and go, well, what would that look like? Here we go again, the way I think. And like you talked about content, well, that'd be a whole subject I could get into about why and how that works and what the effects are and everything else. But basically, when you refute the negativity, it doesn't mean that it's not there. It's kind of like what I went through with trying to do the lecture in Sedona.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's there, but I don't choose to participate in it. I don't choose to give it any energy. And so once you get up to the 700s, you're going to get into an area where you basically no longer participate with an emotional or even an intellectual response to things. And from 700 or around that area, really the only thing that interests you is the truth of it. Okay. And so the truth of it becomes something that's what I call indivisible. In other words, it's just what it is, right? And I hate that language. It's much better expressed. David reviewed one person, he said was at 904 or something. Wang Po, there's a little bitty book he wrote, 300 BC or something. And and one of the little aphorisms he put together said, reality is reality. What you think about reality and how you feel about reality is not reality. And somehow Budweiser missed that.
Here we go, Randy.
Other people, I mean, I don't know who, but so when you look at that, we were going to say political parties and all a bunch of other people.
Yeah.
But anyway, reality is reality. What you think about it, how you feel about it is not reality. That's Wang Po, 900. But the other thing that happens is that for somebody to exist at those levels requires like acolytes. It requires servants. It requires students. It requires followers, whatever. Like we still have the same patronage involved, like you talked about in the monetizing things. Mm-hmm. That's patronage. It's the same thing the Romans had. It's the same thing the Oracle of Delphi had. Same thing kings use. It's the same routine. Even Buddha is like, I can't remember how many servants, 400 servants or something, while he sat beneath the Bodhi tree. Right? And it's like, wow, you could probably, you know, if all your needs are met or been dispersed with, which is the Tibetan way, then you could probably have free reign to your consciousness.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I teach and practice is that you should have free reign of your consciousness, not just of your language, like say, be able to talk about things. But if you have free reign of your conscious, you can explore. And to me, that's ultimately what happens. You end up being an explorer across all time, all space, all reality, all universes, metaverses, whatever verses you want to come up with. So the other thing that happens is we use that.
Hold on, Randy. Sorry. Before you go, there are a couple of things I want to ask about with everything you've said so far, so we don't forget. This last part about the free reign of consciousness, where you say if you're going to live as a human at this level, you're going to have this patronage. Servants, people, students coming to you because they see you as an enlightened person. And so you're, providing education or teaching. Now, the classic, is it the egg that comes first or is it the chicken? So do you have all of this, then get to enlightenment, or do you get to enlightenment and then because people validate that you are enlightened, they start providing that patronage to you and following you and offering you gifts and saying, I want to do this for you so you don't have to worry about it?
You are a potential provider of information and energy at any level of the scale of consciousness, positive or negative. Mm-hmm. So everybody is providing energy, positive or negative, or information, beneficial or not beneficial, right? Detrimental. So discernment becomes really the trick, and to discern the truth. And Hawkins talks about that. And the language is, if you can't discern the truth, then you have to believe what anybody tells you. Well, I think that's our society today is very much believers, right? It's because they can't discern the truth, so they have to allow what I call pick your authority day, okay?
Yeah.
Now, if you get to a certain level, it's like without necessarily intent, there flows through you a benefit of knowledge, and the knowledge that flows through you is a benefit to others. Okay.
Yeah.
At a certain level, it's wrong to say that Joel Osteen doesn't provide a benefit. Right?
Yeah.
And we could name dozens of others, right?
Of course. Of course.
But it's like what I call region specific, or LOC, level of consciousness specific. In other words, that benefit only exists there. And as soon as you rise above it or seek below it, then you're going to seek an additional source of information.
Yeah.
So it seems to be that humans seek out information at different levels of consciousness. And the problem I have is that once you go above 700, you're in the level of what we call avatars.
Yeah. Okay. One more question before we talk about that level, avatars, is, Randy, now this is Dr. David Hawkinson's scale, right? He says, this is my scale. You can create your own if you start to embody your own, or if you find your own way to access this information field and validate what you call truth, or what reality is. So what's interesting now is, if somebody's at this level, is it society confirming that they are, or is it themselves saying, I am at that level? And I say this, and I'll rephrase it. I'll preface it by telling you this. So I was pharmacy director. And then one day I come out of the office and I immediately realize I am only pharmacy director because one other person other than me sees me as pharmacy director. I could come out there and say, hey, I'm a pharmacy director, or I could say I'm the president of the United States, and people are going to say something's wrong with you, right? Like, you're not. And so, so it just takes one person to say, oh yeah, you are the pharmacy director. And then all of a sudden it's validated.
Yes. It's,
So,
I hereby certify as language. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can post an affidavit by, what do you call it? Having it stamped, certified.
What's the guy's, it's gonna, is it what you do at the banks?
You can have a notarized statement.
Notarized. Yep.
And I could say, I hereby certify and post this affidavit that I'm at 900 consciousness. And you can file it with the court. And you have the right to say that. Okay. Now, whether anybody else wants to engage you at that level becomes a whole different thing. Yeah. And the reason I say that is because avatars in the past have provided some sort of direction or some sort of rules or some sort of ideas that allowed you to, let's say, become expansive, right? Remember, the energy field should expand with each level of consciousness. That's the biggest thing to understand. You shouldn't tell somebody you're at 900, because if they can't feel it or sense it, it's not true, okay? And I've seen, there's one real popular right now, and he is the expert on everything, right? He is the absolute source of, if you want to grow your hair, or you want, and like there's some daily deluge of stuff where I'm trying to tell you I'm the expert on it. Well, the problem I have with that is like, well, how many people ask you for that information, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the things I think is interesting is that historically people sought out people over, say, 600-700. They would try to go find those people. And instead now we have what I call a popular version of that. And we call it Joe Rogan. or we call it, I'm naming names today.
You're naming names.
Because all these people become the highest level they can relate to. So if you come out with a truth higher than that, it's like you just lost everybody. They have not evolved to where they can hear that, and are willing to engage it where it's actually experiential, not just something to yak about. So, so the historical model was that you would take students, I followed that, and you would try to provide them with information that would benefit them and allow them to move forward in life in a way that was, we'll call it productive, right? Now, that's a lot of assumptions right there. But in doing so, like on my side, I derive great benefit. It makes me light up, that we talked about earlier. But to know that I've been able to help somebody, and it goes all over the place. I mean, this week I had a lady that passed away, and we worked through her illness and made sure she got out of here. Find a missing child. I mean, it's just, there's all kinds of stuff where if you can provide the benefit of truth, then people feel better. Well, if they feel, then that's the best thing you can do for the entire universe. You take our entire news cycle. Tell me what is said in there that made you feel better today.
Student loans are forgiven.
Right? I'll wait, is what it's called.
Wait. Yeah. Well, the other point to this with enlightenment, Randy, is do you attain enlightenment within a specific area of human experience or a topic? And I mean, when I say topic, you can think about like providing healthcare or finding missing children. Does it become very specific, or is enlightenment a broad, or he's got access to a bunch of information, but it's not specific?
Remember what I said about your energy field gets bigger? The higher you go in consciousness, the bigger your energy field. If you're under 200, you have less than a 3-foot energy field, right? If you're at 400 or so, maybe 4 feet, 5 feet. If you experience love, it may be 6 to 9 feet. And here we go, we keep going on. What nobody ever tells you is that every expansion of your energy field involves more information and more energy. So when you get up to and this has been my argument against AI, they are not capable, any AI is not capable of accessing the field, okay? So if we use the language, there's an infinite field of information, and it exists and you can tap into it. As you go up from 600, 700, 800, 900, more and more information is available to you. And the quality of the information becomes more of, we'll say, truthfulness, okay? So what Wang Po said when he said that, reality is reality, that's an ultimate truth, okay? It requires no interaction. And that's what happens too. Once you go above these certain levels, you have no need for interaction, validation, transfer, basically anything. It's called to go without. And it's not a path that's recommended because we're in a, like Madonna said, a material world. So if you're in the material world, I have to help be in it. Don't worry about trying to access these higher levels, because all they're going to do is cause you trouble and cause you to, what I call, separate yourself from the rest of humanity. And the answer is why? Because you can no longer relate, okay? But you can still stand in a position of relating knowledge to them that will benefit them.
Yeah.
And so avatars and, you know, all the other stuff at the 1000 level becomes something that becomes a tremendous benefit to others. It doesn't say anything about the Rolex or the Lambos or the, you know, it doesn't say any of that.
It's the Apple Watch these days, right? It's not Rolex anymore. Randy, what's interesting about what you said is the fact that you are of tremendous benefit to a lot of people. At the same time, you are a source of a lot of pain to a lot of people who misunderstand your information. And I say this because if you look at the religious wars that have been out there, are very much counterintuitive to what the avatars of those religions were essentially preaching. Right? And so you have to say, okay, something this is lost in translation might be the best. Might be the best.
The greatest, I can't remember, Eric Burton, I think, and was a band, Eric Burton and War. War, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. They got it wrong. It's absolutely everything. Right? So, I mean, if it wasn't true, you wouldn't look at 93 to 94% of human history that's war, right?
Yeah.
And if you get out of war, we'll talk like, we'll name some names. They said, I don't know if it's true, Trump didn't instigate any new wars during his presidency, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, that didn't keep other people around the world from instigating wars. Right? And the idea that you would have an avatar that would come to the earth and prevent all wars, it just hadn't happened. You know what I mean? It's like,
we've talked about this in the past, Randy, and I think we talked about this when we were talking about peace. So if you're interested, go watch the topic on peace. And the idea that war is ever going to not be part of our earth reality, in my naive little mind, okay, I don't see it because we're always at war. I'm at war every day. My immune system is fighting foreign bodies nonstop. I'm at war with everybody who's not using the application I'm building for pharmacies. I'm at war with your minds, trying to convert them to believe to not believe essentially, but to buy into the idea that what we're building is beneficial for them. And they're like, no, thank you, come back later. So that's a battle, but yeah, it's so I brought that up to say it's the other side, right? It's if you want to use the word duality, there's a lot of benefit that these avatars provide, and naively you may say a war is not beneficial, but maybe that misunderstanding is playing a role, is helping somebody awaken. As a matter of fact, Dr. Hawkins talked about it in one of his talks. He said a soldier at war with a gun to his face who's about to die could quickly transcend the level of pride up to a next level, and further up when they realize, what they're doing or what the experience they're going through. But I've always wondered this, Randy, and I'll share a personal experience. The week I had my awakening, I've said this time and time again, I was too happy to function. Like everything was the creator. My computer was vibrating as the creator. My car, I got into it and I was hugging it and laughing and crying, and everything was just love and bliss. And it felt like what many of us describe to be heaven, which I talk about in my book, that heaven can be boring because there's no challenge. Everything is readily available. All is love. And ever since then, for that entire week, like I couldn't function, and many people could not relate to me, including my wife. This is very true. She was really concerned that I'd gone off the deep end because I was just too happy and too blissful, and nothing could piss me off. We were discussing her applying to medical schools months up to the day that I had my awakening. And then after it happened, when it came up, I couldn't even get mad. I was just cheesing like, oh, it doesn't matter. Like you could do this. And even though this is classic human, even though she was getting what she was fighting for, it was uncomfortable. And she was not like readily accepting of, wait, why would you just change like that? And what happened? Why are you so happy? I don't understand this.
Well, you go out of interaction. You go, to me, once you go beyond even the 500s, you start losing your ability to interact with inanity, is what I call it. It just doesn't interest you. People want to argue about politics. Who cares, right? It's another country western song. It's all about me. It's all about you. It's like, I want to talk about me, right? And so and then you get in the 700s, you don't even want to talk about you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't interest you anymore. Well, we go back to look at the current state of the news and say everybody wants to talk about themselves. Everybody wants to talk, it's all about them.
Yeah.
And so one of the marks as you move higher is it's no longer about you, right? You separate, and that distance creates distance. People don't know what to do with you anymore. They don't know how to relate to you anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, Dr. Hawkins labeled this as the peak of human consciousness. And this was not too long ago, but humans are evolving. So, in your best guess, do you think it's still the case that enlightenment, this level, is the peak of human consciousness, or have we transcended that?
I don't think it's the peak. I think that you peak your level of consciousness at each level. It's like once you max out 200, it doesn't interest you anymore. That which was an attraction becomes an aversion. Okay. So now you go to the 220s or 230s, and it's just like there's this constant what I call wave action of peaking and then going back into the study again. And again, it's like a college and then a master's degree and then a PhD and then, PhD, you're done. No, there's a lot more to learn.
There's the real world, man. Yeah.
Even when they posit 100 and then they start talking about the Galactic Federation and the 9 whatever that watch over mankind, and like this is all imagination, right? And it's not that it isn't true, but it's only true for them. In other words, that reality is not something that's experiential or shareable by other people. And when that becomes true, we call you crazy, because it's a simple delusional, right? Out there, right? Back to the war thing. One more thing is I'm Native American, and we had warrior societies, right? Warrior societies were to protect the elderly, the young. They were to protect the property. They were to provide security, right? And of course, the great fear that everybody preys on in the media and stuff now is the fear they use is security, right? Being insecure allows you to be manipulatable, makes you susceptible to disinformation, all kinds of things. But in the Native American tradition, those were highly engaged activities. In other words, you weren't there for yourself. Again, you were there for the people. Okay. And so we have the person Nobel Peace Prize that was created by the guy that gave us dynamite to blow up people in World War I. So I designed a medal and I call it a war medal. And I would like to present that to the best warriors of the day, right?
Yeah.
Because we are two-faced about, we promote peace and then bomb the hell out of everybody in the universe, right?
Yeah.
And the idea is it's just one planet, right? Anybody you're bombing yourself. So
yeah.
Somehow that gets lost in translation, as you said.
It does. That dichotomy really does, Randy. You want to hear another one I was thinking about this morning when I was getting ready? Is with all these recent leaks from the Army airmen who leaked that. Yeah, I was thinking America prides itself on free press, but we have a CIA. America prides itself on free press, right? Freedom of the press, but we have a CIA that's keeping secrets.
Right. Yeah. So it's founded on lying, right?
Yeah, man. Like I'm like, wait, it doesn't add up. Something's off here. Okay.
They need a big statue of Beelzebub or something. There's one of the fallen angel minions of Satan or something that's the liar, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I was just like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Everybody needs a hero. But like
Um,
him, it's like, thank you for sharing.
It's okay. It's the beautiful thing about planet Earth. And okay, when you were even talking about maybe there are elevated conscious levels above 1,000, and you brought in the Galactic Federation, and I just thought to myself, the Galactic Federation exists, and the information that I've accessed about who these people are, or and I should say people, who these beings are, because they're not people, right? They're not human people. Is they're working to help humanity fight against something else. So there's another side that even at that higher level of consciousness, they're still battling, right? There's still a war going on. And then you come down to what we may consider as less consciously evolved than us, and you think about ants and bees, and they have like soldier ants that are protecting the high, like, so it's an inherent part of consciousness. And I think how you view it, how you perceive it, I don't know, I guess speaks to the level of consciousness that you've peaked at.
Two things. That reality is only, it's kind of like when I do book reviews on science fiction. Okay. When you create a story in science fiction like Childhood's End, Arthur C. Clarke, that becomes a body, a bracket of information that people can access. Okay. It's wholly created by you, let's say, out of your imagination. Okay. And the more people start reading it and believing it and acting on it, it can become something greater than just a morphic field. It actually assumes what we call a presence. And God, what's the language for it? It assumes some form of consciousness. It becomes an entity. It becomes something interactive. And so what gets me is that humans in their infinite wisdom keep resurrecting 2,000, 4,000, the Anuki, the Anuki, or whatever, the LOM. And they're all in Mars, and 30,000 years from now, and 50,000 years ago. Reality is reality. You have no knowledge of that other than your imagination. None, zero. I have a standing offer. All the people in the last 10 years I've heard talk about UFOs, right? Mm-hmm. Not one of them has ever lighted on my lawn and said, let's go to lunch. Right? And I don't know anybody that can say that, right? And bring your friends and we're buying. You see what I mean? Yeah. Because ultimately what you get into is like, what's lunch and what's money? And I mean, it goes on forever that you have to fill in these blanks. It's called information density. Yeah. So there is no information density for all this other than that which has been created, as opposed to that which exists. Yeah. And that becomes a basic dichotomy.
Someone will say, Randy, careful, they'll come. Right? Someone say, hey, someone took me out to lunch and I told them they didn't believe me. I got the Man in Black light showed in my face. But here's something I can allude to, Randy. When you talk about anybody who is researching the past, archaeologists, researching ancient ruins, on planet, off planet, here's why I find it interesting. Because I am living in a time where the village that I come from in West Africa, I'm seeing it's being overrun by vegetation because there was a war there that displaced a lot of people. And so schools, my grandparents' house, all of that is being overrun by vegetation. And I'm really seeing nature just do its magic, right? Come in and take over. And then I got to thinking one day, 100 years from now, some beings of the future are going to go there digging. They're going to be like, oh, people used to live here. But they're never going to be able to explain exactly how those people lived there. It's going to be very much influenced by how they see society in their current time. We can argue to the best of our ability, we're keeping records with video and everything, but it may not be good enough for the people in the future. Just like people in the past were like, we're writing down, we got cuneiform. They're fully going to understand language. And so I've always been a little bit just skeptical when I see information out there about what was going on in some past ruin. I'm like, you don't know. Heck, today, if I go just yesterday and I'm like, what the heck was going on here with people who are still alive? I can't figure out if I'm at a crime scene and it's like, oh, what happened here? Right. There's a part of what you just said there that I've thought about that, and it's true.
Reality is relevant until it isn't. So to argue about our past is to say, I had a job or I went out with somebody on a date. It was important at the time, it was relevant, and it was reality. And none of that is true now. Okay? None, zero.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at that and then look at above 1,000 consciousness, the relevancy of that doesn't exist for that which is below 1,000. The same thing as if you're 500, that doesn't exist for somebody at 40 or 60 level consciousness. It just doesn't exist. Even though it may be surrounding them, it doesn't exist for them. And that's the uniqueness of human experience. And that's why we say there's only one human and only one human lifetime, one human experience.
Yeah.
And so when we look at that, to start filling in the blanks, like where we do with all these grandmasters and ascended beings and all this other crap out there, is none of them invited me to lunch. I'm available.
Not if you're going to be talking to them like this. They're like, I don't want to have lunch with this guy. No.
The little white rabbit didn't show up on my computer screen. I mean, what the
What the heck?
Right? I'm willing to engage in conversation. And
Yeah.
so created reality isn't.
Yeah. So let me ask you this with what you're saying, Randy. You know, we got, what is it, iPhone 14 right now? Pro, right? So at some point there was the iPhone 1. Are you saying it's better to be fully engaged with the iPhone 14 versus worry about how it evolved from the iPhone 1 until the iPhone 14 today?
Yeah. Yes. And that comes back to this whole thing about whatever level that you would find yourself of consciousness, you're supposed to engage it. Okay. If you're working on the intellect and can't get above it, like Einstein 499, when you can't get above the intellect, you're denying the majority of the universe. Okay. And it's not even active denial. It's just that you can't go there. Right. The rest of the universe is not available to science. The majority of the universe is not available to science because they can't tell me all kinds of things.
No, of course not.
Tiahuanaco, you know,
Yeah.
There's reality. It's staring you in the face. And as a scientist, physicist, I don't care, pick one of them. Not one of them can not only explain it, codify it, and put it into a law. They can't go build a damn thing. And I've been a builder. I know what that's like. So
yeah.
But they want to tell me they're smarter than me. They're more educated, more knowledgeable, and they have no basis for that. When faced with the reality of Tiahuanaco sitting there, which is all the machining, or the pyramids and a whole bunch of other things around the universe that they just flat out can't explain.
Can't explain. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. It's why we have these talks. We do our best to explain. Level 700, though, I do have to say, with the experience I had, it's as close to level 700 as I can, in my own mind, relate to. And the truth is, I couldn't function as a human. Um, yeah, and I
You'd lose that. Remember, the going away is to you become expansive. The language I use is, let's say the distance between atoms in your body. Let's say you're at 300 or something, normal person, whatever, and we'll just say, well, they're a meter apart. Pick a number. This is all fantasy. But that same person, when you get to 700, they might be miles apart.
Mhm.
If you reach 1,000, they might be, light years apart for each atom in your body. There's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
And what that meant, you become diffused into the universe. Okay. It also means you have access. You can pull information from anywhere in that universe. It's one of the meditation I do is go out 10 light years, 20 years, 50, see what's out there. There's other.
Is it very dark out there, 10 light years away?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a play on words. Is it very dark, 10 light years away? That's a joke. I'm sorry.
Because they want to talk about, like I said, all these avatars and all these people look out for humanity. And let's talk about Buzz Lightyear. He's a better icon than, Yeah. And then people go crazy and you go, well, it's no more fantastical than you coming up with a galactic federation or some other crap out there. Right.
Yeah.
And call me. Right.
Yeah. Call you, right? Yeah. One interesting book about what you just talked about that I read is Seth Speaks by Jane Roberts. So at some point in, I hope I can review another book and not get in trouble. Haha. At some point in the book, Seth is talking about how he helped assimilate a soul who had just gone through a life. And this soul was a firm believer in Christ and felt that his afterlife was going to involve his soul being fought for by Christ and the devil. It's like Catholic teaching. And so what the entity that was Seth speaking through Jane said was he and another entity had to reenact, based off of this person's beliefs, his soul being fought for by Christ and the opposite. And they basically put on a show for him. They're like, okay, this is what he believes, so we have to make him feel comfortable. So we have to create this reality for him. And he was there screaming, and we were screaming and saying, no, I got his soul, and blah, blah, blah. And after all of that was done, and he felt that Christ had to kill the devil or the good guy to kill the bad person. And so they acted all of that out just to help this soul. And it touched me as, if we are creating this reality, right? Like, is it not real because someone else is acting it? You know what I mean? Like what? It goes back to your.
First of all, the idea of thought forms actually brings in to the idea of that there are things other than people in the universe, that there are that are independent of physical form, spirits. And if you keep rolling that out, you can read Siri Paul Twitchell, The Tiger's Fang. He lists about 4,000 of them, kind of like with levels of consciousness, 4,000 different realms, domains, dimensions, universes, kingdoms. It goes on, like I said, forever and ever. And so the thing that gets me about, like, the Seth books were interesting. I'll probably get in trouble for talking about them. Everything is presented in what I call human language, human form, and human thought. And you're telling me that humans are the only thing that exists in the universe when you do that. And so I think Philip K. Dick did a book of robust stream of electric sheep or something, right? It's like for us to not be aware that the entire animal kingdom and insects and everything else, they have spirit too. This is Native American teaching.
Mhm.
They have existence independent of humans, right? And therefore have language and cosmology, and it goes on and on and on and on. And it's like humans, one of the hardest things we can do as humans is try to reframe existence in something non-human. And even when they talk about Elohim and Anuki and all this, it's just a variation of the human form. When Seth talks about it, it's just a variation of duality of the universe. It's like, can somebody please give me a book that doesn't include these things, that actually is expansive in imagination? And of course, if you wrote it, nobody would understand it, right? So
That was what I was going to get at. Yeah.
understand what it means to not be human.
Yep.
And that becomes one of the things when you go above 1,000, theoretically, you would know what it means to not be human.
To not be human, yeah. Randy, this is a good place to summarize it. So we got level 700 to 1,000, right? The four main things I always wrote with these is that they influence all of mankind. And you talked about that, right? Great benefit to, I shouldn't say all, to a huge amount of mankind. And because of dichotomy, that great benefit misunderstood, or maybe not really misunderstood, but can also be a source of lack of benefit for a lot of mankind. We alluded to this, but they're also originators of a lot of spiritual paths that people eventually follow. You talked about the Buddha, and I liked where you said they have a lot of support, really. People who are following them, acknowledging them, and basically, I was going to say feeding their ego, but they don't have an ego, right? And then the question I had was, does that come before the Enlightenment or after? And you talked about,
It comes after.
Yeah.
It's like there's some recognition, recognition that you're different, let's say.
Yeah.
The other problem I have with all this is like, let's say Joe Rogan, call me, right? If you want to know the truth, but he would be a modern day avatar, right? 500 million followers or some stuff, right?
Uh-huh.
And then we go, well, we look at that, well, that many followers, that many influence, he's projecting and stuff. But we might go, well, what's the level of consciousness that's being projected by that avatar? And it's, I would beg to say, not in the 700 to 1,000 level, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I calibrate that. So, but
Randy's calibration.
Yeah. But the problem I have with all of it is, why do we always have to look to the past? You're telling me there's no avatars on the earth right now, right?
And that's
and even worse, you're telling me you can't find somebody that has what I call an avatar type presence to transmit information to you at any given moment. And because we know that's true, because sometimes the elders in our tribes actually project out the truth to you at a very, very high level. And we're acknowledged and accepting of that. And yet in our society, we have to look 2,000 years back. There's been 4,500 gods in the universe, let's say in the last recorded 3,000 or 4,000 years, right?
I know, yeah. Randy, I think that speaks to who we are as humans, which is interesting that even the avatars who existed amongst humans and had followers, there was still a large group of people who did not view them as such until after they were gone, right? Like, and so there's always this hindsight is 2020. Or that was an avatar. You need to believe he was an avatar or she was an avatar or I'll kill you, right? Like that happens after the fact, after they've gone. So yeah, it's who we are. It's part of the excitement and the lore of being human. But it's
one of the things I should write a book.
Randy, you've been saying that for a long time. I need to be your avatar and just
It's called
sit you down and make you.
graveyard of the gods, because where did they go? Right?
They evolved.
Yeah. If they were a thought form, the thought form still existed. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can contact them. If it's more than a thought form, it has some level of physicality to it. You can engage in conversation, right?
They'll show up at your lawn.
Look, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
But
like
no,
that,
it's
don't get
awesome.
too far afield with. You're supposed to experience your reality at the level of consciousness you're at. Period. Engage it. Jump in the middle of it. Wrestle around with it. And it'll eventually kick you out. That's the thing. You don't have to advance yourself. All these people, we can, what do you call it, ascension 3 days and do the drugs and all this other stuff, ayahuasca. It's like, no, just wrestle around the level of consciousness you're at. It'll eventually kick you out, right? It's like you can't stand it anymore, right? Welcome to U.S. elections.
I love it, man. It's about fully being and embodying the human experience. It's why you came here. And it's another conversation, but it always speaks to we got here, but why are we so excited to leave? It's funny. Randy, it's always a pleasure, man. I'm glad to have this conversation with you again. And then what this does is kind of a big deal. We're closing a chapter of our lives. We've been kicked out of a level of consciousness.
I love these conversations. I thank you for the opportunity to engage in them. Same thing. I think it's stuff that it opens up a vista. It opens up a horizon of something that lets you look up ahead a little bit and maybe decide on a different direction in your life. So
yeah.
And so I appreciate it and thank you. Right.
Yeah. And thank you for your time. Thank you for recommending the book. Guys, I think Randy showed it earlier, right? Dr. David Hawkins's Power versus Force. You held up a copy. Grab it, read it. Very fascinating. Reach out to Randy if you have questions, of course. Watch the old videos. And if you're liking these conversations, share them with friends and then subscribe to the channel. I'll throw that plug. I always forget to do it because it's weird. I'd rather just put it out, watch it if you like, subscribe. But I'm going to put a plug today. Subscribe. And yeah. So, Randy, thank you. Until our next conversation. I hope you stay well.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you. Come up with more things. I'll be happy to get in the middle of it. All right.
Will do.
Take care. All right. Thank you.